different things like that, like things you would never think of, crazy stuff. We said yes a lot to mostly everything and everywhere.
They were more than bandmates. They were brothers in boots, riding the wild wave of fame from Jersey dive bars to global domination. But somewhere between the platinum records and sold-out tours, something broke. And Richie Sambora? He's finally breaking his silence. For years, he kept it quiet, until now. What really happened behind the glam, the grins, and the guitar solos? What did Jon Bon Jovi not say when Richie walked away? And why is one of rock's most iconic duos now a story of distance instead of reunion? This isn't just about ego or fame. It's about something far more personal. And once you hear what Richie reveals, you'll never hear those classic hits the same way again. Brothers in Jersey rock long before the limelight, Richie Sambora and Jon Bon Jovi were two driven musicians grinding out in New Jersey's local rock scene, hailing from the working-class towns of Woodbridge and Sayreville. Respectively, both were molded by the grit and tenacity of their hometowns. Their early music ventures, Jon with the Wild Ones and Richie with bands like Message, saw them playing tiny clubs, VFW halls, and backyard gigs, chasing a dream that few believed could come true. What brought them together was more than just ambition. It was a shared reverence for musical storytellers like Bruce Springsteen and blues-driven showmen like Led Zeppelin. When Sambora officially joined Bon Jovi in 1983, it was a pivotal moment for the newly signed band. His arrival didn't just fill a guitar slot. It elevated the entire sound. His bluesy, emotionally charged playing and natural chemistry with Jon helped sculpt the anthemic, heartland rock sound that would define the band. In those early performances at clubs like the Fast Lane in Asbury Park, their synergy was unmistakable. Richie's instinct for arrangement and harmony perfectly complemented Jon's bold, radio-friendly vocals, creating a sound that felt both massive and personal. Their partnership turned out to be very effective in the songs that were composed and linked across generations. Peak. Sambora's talkbox solo on Living on a Prayer, the brooding riffs of Wanted Dead or Alive, and the heart-rending sincerity of I'll Be There For You, all of which are painstakingly crafted to become part of that distinctive Bon Jovi sound. The band was as close offstage, with images of giggly faces in backstage corridors. Brotherly energy on tour. All became a portrait of two people closely bonded through trust and shared struggle. The reality of Picture Perfect's all characterized by Richie being the earthen release valve with Jon from all the madness that comes with fame. But in that bond, a silent hierarchy was already forming. So much so that even while they were at their most united, Jon was already being positioned, designed, or defaulted as the face of the brand. Richie stood just out of the spotlight center on most occasions, despite co-writing quite a few of the band's hits and serving up some of their most memorable sonic moments. Still committed to the vision they built together, his early years weren't all about music. It was about two Jersey boys tapping into a once-in-a-lifetime rhythm that took them from little neighborhood garages to global stages. But as their bond deepened, something even more powerful was quietly taking shape behind the music. The soul behind the strings as Bon Jovi's signature sound took shape in the mid-1980s. Richie Sambora wasn't just playing guitar. He was defining the sonic personality of the band. His tone, phrasing, and melodic instinct provided a contrast to the glam metal trends of time, grounding the band in something more soulful and enduring. Sambora's style fused blues-based emotion with arena rock confidence, producing solos and rhythms that carried as much emotional weight as the lyrics themselves. His work on stage and in the studio was never about technical flair alone. It was about storytelling, each solo a narrative arc that expanded the song's meaning. At the peak of their creative synergy, albums like Slippery When Wet and New Jersey became masterclasses in radio-friendly rock with depth. While Jon Bon Jovi delivered vocal power and pop accessibility, Sambora's fingerprints were all over the arrangements, giving the songs warmth, edge, and that unteachable sense of feel. Tracks like Never Say Goodbye and I'll Be There For You showcase his ability to build emotional resonance into guitar lines, while his harmonies elevated every chorus into anthemic territory. Richie wasn't simply accompanying. He was completing the emotional architecture of their biggest hits. Sambora's uniqueness did not just stem from his skill, but from his restraint and intuition. He knew when to hold on for silence and when to let a solo rip, when to harmonize behind Jon's voice, and when to allow his guitar to shriek. This balance became an important trademark of Bon Jovi's most recognizable songs, with his contributions to mood and texture surpassing any gaudy production. Sambora brought nuance to a band often stereotyped for image over substance. The music would have a heart beneath all the image trappings. While critics and musicians alike recognize Sambora as the unsung architect of Bon Jovi's emotional core, history has often elevated Jon Bon Jovi as the frontman. The talkbox solo in Livin' on a Prayer became a symbol for a band that could marry showmanship with substance. Sambora's guitar work continues to electrify Bon Jovi's best-loved tunes, a reminder that behind every powerhouse singer stands another respectably capable guitarist who knows a thing or two about communicating with strings. Tensions behind the hits as Bon Jovi became one of the biggest bands in the world. Cracks began to show beneath the surface glamour. From the late 80s into the early 2000s, Jon Bon Jovi's rise as the face of the band became more than just a branding strategy. It shifted the entire internal structure. Richie Sambora, once a driving creative force and equal collaborator, began to feel sidelined in major decisions about the band's direction, image, and legacy. This shift wasn't immediate or dramatic, but rather a gradual erosion of influence that left Sambora in a role he hadn't signed up for. Background support in a project he helped build from the ground up. The imbalance became especially pronounced as the pressures of constant touring and producing hit records mounted. The pace was relentless, leaving little room for collaboration or emotional recalibration. Sambora, who had once been deeply involved in shaping the band's musical vision, started to feel like his input had less weight. As he later shared, being physically present in rehearsals and recording sessions didn't always equate to having a voice. There was a growing disconnect between what the band looked like on stage, a unified juggernaut, and how fractured it felt behind closed doors. It was only made worse by the personal tribulations Sambora had to go through, such as struggles with addiction and the emotional impact of his divorce. He became vulnerable and searched for stability. Yet, the environment did not offer any comfort any longer in this group. The thing that hurt the most was not what other people said or did in the eyes of his closest companions. He just felt as if he floated through life indifferent. When he did speak about various problems or ideas, he still ended up feeling either rejected or outnumbered. The bond, once thick with a sense of success, was replaced with an insular hierarchy, as Sambora would later explain, where his place did not feel very secure anymore. Unlike other partnerships that would have erupted with public headlines, fiery interviews, and other actions that would seek to publicize a divorce, this simply dissolved in silence. For many years, Sambora would continue playing the role, crisscrossing the world on tour, recording, or appearing as part of the group. However, by then, he had emotionally started to drift away. By the time he left the band in 2013, the final severing wasn't just one specific instant. It was a culmination, drawing upon years of trying to negotiate healthy territory within an environment that no longer really felt collaborative or safe. The pressure was not explosive, but corrosive, and it quietly unraveled one of rock's most iconic creative bonds. The 2013 disappearance in April 2013, just hours before a Bon Jovi show in Calgary, fans were blindsided by the sudden announcement, Richie. Sambora would not be performing. The official statement cited personal reasons, but offered no timeline or explanation, leaving speculation to spiral. As one of the most visible and beloved members of the band, Sambora's abrupt exit sparked confusion and concern among fans worldwide. Initially, many assumed it was a temporary break, perhaps due to health or family matters. But as weeks turned into months without his return, it became clear that something deeper was unraveling behind the scenes. Privately, Sambora was reaching a breaking point. Years of relentless touring, creative disputes, and mounting frustration over being sidelined had culminated in emotional and physical burnout. In interviews since, including a 2024 New York Post feature, Sambora described the environment as toxic, noting that the band had become more of a business than a brotherhood. He said he felt unheard, creatively restricted, and spiritually depleted. More importantly, he cited his daughter, Ava, as a major reason for stepping away. He wanted to be present in her life, something the band's nonstop schedule didn't allow. It was such an excruciating experience that it proved even more traumatic than what had occurred to bring about the statement. Sambora claims he did not hear things directly, but found out that Bon Jovi went on tour without him, and then learned that the band had hired Phil X in his place through the internet. And that sucker punched him gut-wise. After a lifetime of loyalty and contribution, Sambora did not feel just pushed out, but erased without even the courtesy of a conversation. In his own words, "It was like I disappeared and nobody even called." It was a jolt of absence quite out of place in fans' minds, not just because of the brilliant fingerwork over harmonies, but mostly because Sambora was the soul and heart behind the band's music. For now, Richie finally began to tell his side of the story after all this time, even through the hushed silence of Bon Jovi. It wasn't just one spat of hers that drove her out. It was years of feeling creatively and personally undervalued. His apology and public remarks of 2024 make that aspect clear. That disappearing drama had to do with self-preservation, family, and finally leaving a place that no longer felt like home. Family over fame in the aftermath of Richie Sambora's unexpected exit from Bon Jovi's 2013, Because We Can Tour, one of the most personal and compelling reasons behind his decision, gradually came to light. His daughter, Ava. In multiple interviews, including his 2024 apology featured in Yahoo and the New York Post, Sambora explained that stepping away from the band was less about conflict and more about prioritizing his role as a father. Ava, whom he shares with actress Heather Locklear, was entering her teenage years, and Sambora recognized that his constant touring was creating a void in their relationship. "You don't get those years back," he said, "and I didn't want to be a ghost in her life." For Sambora, the pressure of balancing fatherhood with the demands of an international touring schedule had become unsustainable. He admitted that while music had given him everything, fame, fortune, legacy, it had also taken a toll on his personal life. With Ava at a formative age and going through her challenges, including her parents' high-profile divorce, Richie knew that showing up wasn't just a choice, it was a necessity. "I didn't want to grow up without me being there," he explained. "Being a rock started to mean anything if I couldn't be a good dad." There was a difficult, mixed reaction from fans. Some blasted Sambora for abandoning the tour, decrying professionals and traitors. Others lauded his decision, arguing that it was brave and human to recognize the sacrifices made by musicians behind the scenes. In hindsight, his definition of walking out isn't as impulsive as supposed. Rather, it is deeply considered personal accountability. A decade later, according to Sambora, his choice was not about leaving music. It was about refusing to abandon his daughter. However, today, according to Sambora, the greatest legacy won't be found on stage. Rather, it will be with the relationship he forged with Ava. In his posts, he brags about how proud he is of having raised her, not only well-educated and creative, but also very close. His leaving the Bon Jovi family shocked fans and altered the course of the band, but Richie never looked back with regret about placing family first. "I can play guitar forever, but I only get one chance to be her dad," he blurted out. The goodbye may have been personal, but what followed spoke volumes without a word. Media silence. Private fallout following Richie Sambora's abrupt departure from Bon Jovi in 2013. Both he and Jon Bon Jovi maintained a notable silence. There were no heated interviews, no dramatic public feuds, and no official explanation beyond vague references to personal reasons. Yet the lack of words said plenty. According to insiders and longtime observers, the friendship and professional bond between Richie and Jon had already begun to fracture well before the tour. While the band continued to operate publicly as a polished unit, privately, the tension had reached a breaking point. Creative differences, personal disconnection, and growing resentment simmered beneath the surface. One of the most telling signs of the divide was how decision-making evolved within the band. Sambora, once a key contributor to the group's creative process, was being excluded from major discussions. In interviews, he later revealed that toward the end, he felt like a hired gun rather than a founding member. Studio sessions had reportedly become colder, more transactional, and less collaborative. According to his 2024 interview in Yahoo Entertainment, Sambora had reached a point where he no longer felt heard or valued. It stopped feeling like a band and more like a corporation. Sambora somehow managed to persist in being outwardly silent against Jon or the band for several years despite the growing frustration within him. He would allude to the emotional scar it left on him much later. In recent interviews, Only then was he able to describe the situation as being emotionally and creatively draining, stating he felt that the environment had turned toxic. The silent riff was not a dramatic explosion, but rather a gradual, poisoned erosion of trust and warmth. In a way, that silence must have been even more painful. No closure, just a void. Meanwhile, Jon Bon Jovi has mostly restrained his comments regarding Richie. Over the years, he commented on the difficulty of Sambora's departure, but never elaborated. He was more concerned about moving the band forward with new guitarist Phil X rather than dwelling on past conflicts.